So let's take a look at some of the economic factors at the moment. And we start with the rand. We just saw they're hovering around the 1360 mark at the moment. I guess many investors looking at the Reserve Bank and what they'll do with interest rates this week.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of uncertainty around where rates are going, particularly in the US, and uncertainty in the markets in general. Consensus is the Reserve Bank will leave rates unchanged. I think the majority of South African analysts are expecting that there'll be no change in interest rates. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Reserve Bank plays out what's happening in the US and what the US Fed is doing. Also, not a lot of fundamental economic data indicating a real need for an interest rate rise at the moment. The currency has weakened, but it'll take a while for the effects of that to filter through into the inflation numbers.
Indeed, and I guess the fact that the US Federal Reserve didn't raise rates, it does give our MPC some breathing space to perhaps just observe the global setting at the moment. You agree?
Absolutely, and to get a handle also on the increased uncertainty around the global economic recovery and what is happening in global markets around the world, particularly Europe and China.
Now, the price of Brent crude oil, it had picked up, but I see it's halting at that level, $46. What are the factors at play here, just internationally, with the oil price at the moment?
Well, I think one of the things with the oil price is that it is governed by a cartel. So similar in the way that, you know, it's difficult to know whether data out of China is correct or what the policy response will be. It's the same with the oil price. It's governed and managed very tightly by the cartel in the Gulf states. And what happens there and what they decide has the biggest impact on the oil price. There was a massive increase in supply that came on board with fracking in the US. But you know how sustainable those supplies are with oil at its current levels remains to be seen. As things play out in the Middle East and a deal struck between the US and Iran, we'll see how that impacts the price of oil. But also, you know, with oil at $100 a barrel, a lot of technology would have started to come on board to reduce dependency on oil, and that takes time to filter through into the economy and have an impact on the demand-supply dynamics and subsequently the price.
Yeah, indeed. I want to bring this back locally now. Another hit for business confidence, something we don't need in the country. The Department of Labour report showing that strikes cost South Africa 6 billion rand in wages last year. Okay, indeed, it is marginally smaller than the loss the year before, but it's not what investors want to see, is it?
No, absolutely not. And those were just lost wages. The impact of lost production, lost productivity, the impacts are far wider than just the wage bill and the loss in wages. And it's been reported almost in a way that makes it sound like a good thing, because there's a 9% decrease despite the fact that there was such a protracted strike in the platinum industry. But you know, I think what we really need to focus on is that this number should come down dramatically, that it's a major drain to the economy. It's a major drain to investor sentiment as well, as particularly when we're under the microscope of foreign investors. And last year we did see a decrease in the number of strikes. It was down, I think, from the record high that we saw in 2014, the number of strikes. But obviously the protracted length of the strike having a major impact.
Claire, before I let you go, it's probably the biggest story internationally on the company front. VW admitting that it cheated on emissions tests. I mean, its shares close to 25% down. It's interesting because here's a company that promised South Africa 4.5 billion rand in investments last month. What's the road here for them?
Absolutely, it's a massive, you know, destruction of shareholder value of their market cap. and it's had wider impacts as well. So we saw today in South Korea the potential fallout from that emissions testing hitting the market in South Korea, where Volkswagen makes up 30% of the foreign car market in that region. And it's not only the cost to the company of having to now recall vehicles and the potential fines that they face, but obviously losing such a huge amount of their market cap will have an impact on their strategy going forward and where they decide to put capital to work in different markets to increase production. Potentially they need to revisit their business plans given what's happened.
All right, we'll leave it there. Claire Rentzke from 27 Investments. Thanks indeed for chatting to us. Now we'll take a look at some local business news when we come back after the break. Stay with us.